Hey there, it's CJ Willie, and I'm cracking a pack. Today I have in front of me an Eldritch Moon Booster pack. In the last video, I featured the Shadows over Innistrad block, and I cracked a Shadows over Innistrad pack. Today I'm going to crack this Eldritch Moon Booster pack. I'm hoping to pull an Emrakul, the Promised End, maybe Liliana, the Last Hope. I definitely would like to get another Selfless Spirit. That would help me have a play set. Spell Queller is another card. Anyway, enough talk. Let's crack the pack. As usual, as I crack the pack, my commentary is going to be from a very casual Magic the Gathering player perspective. Kitchen table magic, if you will. First card out of the pack is Dawn Gryff, 3 mana, 2 and a white. It's a Hippogriff, 2/2 flyer. 3 mana, 2/2 flyer. Yeah, that's a pretty good card. Not too bad of a common, especially in limited. Next up is Brazen Wolves, 3 mana, 2 and a red. It's a wolf at 2/3. Whenever Brazen Wolves attacks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Great aggressive creature. It's exactly what red wants to do. Turn sideways and attack. I would never use this as a blocker. I'm going to play it in an aggressive deck. Next up is Waxing Moon, 2 mana, 1 and a green. It's an instant. Transform up to 1 target werewolf you control. Creatures you control gain trample until end of turn. So a nifty trick to transform one of your human werewolves into a werewolf. It's definitely not as good as Moon Mist that was in the original Innistrad block, but in a pinch, it'll do. Next up is Wolfkin Bond, 5 mana, 4 and a green. It's an enchantment aura, enchant creature. When Wolfkin Bond enters the battlefield, put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. Enchanting creature gets +2/+2. You can buff one of your creatures, give it +2/+2, and leave behind a 2/2 green wolf creature token. If you lose your original creature, at least you've got a 2/2 hanging around to hold down the fort until you can play your next big green beater. Next up is Succumb to Temptation, 3 mana, 1 and 2 black, instant. You draw 2 cards and you lose 2 life. A card in the Read the Bones kind of atmosphere. I would much rather play Read the Bones than I would Succumb to Temptation. The 2 black in the casting cost makes it a little restrictive. Next up is Faithbearer Paladin, 5 mana, 4 and a white. It's a human knight at 3/4. It has lifelink. 5 mana, 3/4 body, lifelinker. In a future set, I believe it was Hour of Devastation, we see this shifted to black, a 5 mana, 3/4 with lifelink. Faithbearer Paladin is a good card in limited, but nothing to be playing in constructed. Next up is Enlightened Maniac, 4 mana, 3 and a blue. It's a human, it's 0/2. When Enlightened Maniac enters the battlefield, put a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi Horror creature token onto the battlefield. This was a really fun card to play in the Shadows over Innistrad limited format. Enlightened Maniac put out a 3/2 when it entered the battlefield. Then it became great fodder for the Emerge mechanic that was featured in the Eldritch Moon set. Next up is Field Creeper, 2 generic mana, artifact creature Scarecrow. It's a 2/1, does nothing else. I suppose it's serviceable and limited if you need like a 23rd creature, but in constructed, there's no way I'm playing it. Next up is Unsubstantiate, 2 mana, 1 and a blue. It's an instant. Return target spell or creature to its owner's hand. This is a similar card to Remand. The only downside is that you don't get to draw a card. However, being able to return a target spell or creature to its owner's hand is kind of a nice utility knife to allow you to choose which option is best. Next up is Geist of the Lonely Vigil, 2 mana, 1 and a white. It's a spirit cleric at 2/3, has defender and flying. It also has delirium. Geist of the Lonely Vigil can attack as though it didn't have defender as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. I found white to be difficult to get delirium. In a defensive deck, it made sense because it held down the fort and eventually might be able to attack, but having delirium on this card seemed to be a little bit of an awkward fit. Our next uncommon is Noose Constrictor, 2 mana, 1 in a green. It's a snake at 2/2. It has reach. Discard a card. Noose Constrictor gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This is exactly the delirium fueled card green needed. Noose Constrictor made it very easy to get delirium. You'd play this on turn 2. On turn 3, you'd attack with it. You'd discard a couple of cards. Pretty soon in a black-green deck, you had delirium by turn 2 or turn 3, and you were off to the races. Okay, now for our rare and mythic rare. Did we hit one of those cards I'm really looking to get? Awesome, we got a Planeswalker. Tamiyo Field Researcher, 4 mana, 1 generic, 1 green, 1 white, 1 blue. Her +1 ability is choose up to 2 target creatures until your next turn. Whenever either of those creatures deal combat damage, you draw a card. That's a pretty cool effect. I've been able to play Tamiyo and +1 on one of my creatures and one of my opponent's creatures guarantees some sort of combat damage. Her -2 is tap up to 2 target non-land permanents. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. So basically a Frost Breath for permanents. And then her -7, draw 3 cards. You get an emblem with, you may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana cost. I have never been able to get Tamiyo to a -7. I've been able to +1 or -2. If you're able to get her out on turn 4, she'll take over the game and pretty much guarantee your victory. Okay, next up should be our flip card. It's a common flip card. So it's Graph Rats, 2 mana, 1 in a black. It's a rat at 2/1. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you both own and control Graph Rats and a creature named Midnight Scavengers, exile them, then meld them into Chittering Host. This was a mechanic that made its debut in Eldritch Moon. It's a meld mechanic. It was only on a handful of cards. If you had both Graph Rats and Midnight Scavengers, you would exile both of them, then return them to the battlefield. And once you return them to the battlefield, you meld them together. So in this instance, Midnight Scavengers, when you flipped it over, would have the bottom half of the card, and you'd have one card that was Chittering Host that would be a 5/6 with some abilities. Okay, looks like we got 2 mythics in one pack. This is crazy. This is something that can happen in the Innistrad, Dark Ascension, Shadows over Innistrad, and Eldritch Moon. You could have the possibility of up to 3 mythic rares in one pack. You could have your mythic rare in a regular slot, you could have a mythic rare in the flip slot, and you could also have a mythic rare in the foil slot. So really, really cool. Eldritch of the Kralin Horde, 5 mana, 3 generic, 1 red, 1 green, legendary creature, human werewolf at 4/4. Whenever this creature enters the battlefield or transforms into Eldritch of the Kralin Horde, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform Eldritch of the Kralin Horde. This mechanic returned from Innistrad, and it was featured mainly on werewolves. If there were no spells cast during the last turn, you could transform the creature. In this case, Eldritch of Kralin Horde. And there we have one of the checklist cards. Would transform, and it would become Eldritch Uncontested Alpha. So a legendary creature werewolf, now at 6/6. Whenever this creature transforms into Eldritch Uncontested Alpha, you may have it fight target non-werewolf creature you don't control. At the beginning of each upkeep, if a player casts 2 or more spells last turn, transform Eldritch Uncontested Alpha. Woo, so there was a lot of great cards in this pack. Fantastic pack. If I had to go with my favorite card or best card out of the pack, it's probably going to be between Tamiyo and Eldritch. I wasn't able to play that much with Eldritch, so I don't have much familiarity with it. I have been able to play with Tamiyo quite a bit, and I think Tamiyo is a very strong card. Her +1 ability draws you cards, and in a pinch, if you need to, you can use her -2 to stop some attacks. Hopefully get to her -7, draw some cards, and start casting non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana cost. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did like it, please subscribe and share. Take some time to tell me in the comment section what was your favorite card or best card out of the pack. Until next time, when I'm back to crack my next Magic the Gathering booster pack.